So after the end of 6 turns here on Fury on Champlain, we start not seeing a lot in terms of action. Those roadblocks, etc., they're a little bit of a harassment, but not much. There's potential danger from whatever this is, but if it's just decoys, it's no real threat. Unless it's a significant force with supplies, it really can't do much, although it could position itself somewhere along the line of supply and block the supply route. The Brits don't really have anything back here to react with that. They're busy pushing forward down their 2 lines. They ought to concentrate probably on one route or the other, just because of the amount of forces that they're using to guard those 2 routes. The problem is, if they get held up on one, they want to be able to do the other, and until they get here, they don't need all the forces. So they'll probably collapse a line of advance once they get there and try to secure one road alone. And if they can get just this one, that's great. And it looks like it's the case. The only problem with that is the bridges. They can't trace supply across a broken bridge. That's going to be kind of a hassle. They got to bring the engineers up to fix those. The fleet still in place. The wind's shifted to the east now, which could cause some problems. Not sailing down, but once they actually have to enter Plattsburgh Bay, that could be kind of tricky, and they could end up wasting a couple of turns dealing with that. So they may have to launch pretty soon. Other than that, there's not a lot going on. After a long break, I didn't get anything in yesterday. I went dancing, actually. Started off with the U.S. turn. Not much to say about it, really, except they built another roadblock. There should be a roadblock, not a bridge out. There's no bridge there. To try to slow the advance. Threw some decoys up that have to be dealt with, or perhaps not decoys. And they're trying to reposition their forces, building the last of the fortifications in Plattsburgh itself. Shifted the Marines over onto Crab Island to help man the guns. The sick alone doesn't seem like enough. And now we're ready for the British turn, where they continue their advance down. I don't know. The English have advanced still along a dual route, which means they're spreading their supply guards way out. But they can consolidate that to a single route once they break this probably non-existent line of decoys. I mean, they've just shot through some others here. And we're back on the U.S. turn. The U.S. are going to get a bunch of militia in here. It would be nice to have attacked before that, but it's really hard to get down there in time. Those are going to be kind of scattered about from the entry hexes, I think. I'm not sure exactly where they'll be. We'll see where they show up in a bit. So U.S. turn 8, they pulled their decoys back, trying to build an offensive line along the Saranac. Setting up to build the last fortification in the city. Actually behind the lines, I thought this one was. But there's one more city hex that they might as well get some entrenchments in. And they got their reinforcements coming in. Some more Vermont troops landed here in Plattsburgh. Not a lot going on. End of turn 8. It's beginning to look kind of like the Brits won't actually be able to crack this easily, just because of time limitations. They've moved up into position. There's still a road, a down bridge in their way. They can't clean that because they couldn't get the engineer up in time. Just the delaying tactics are pretty expensive, actually. And I end up be moving these engines. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's as far as they could go this turn. They're not doing a lot, but and not really too effective. They can't go into villages and they can't get close to Prevost. So They can't do much. I'm planning on moving the British Navy next turn. I've got all the flotation hits fixed. All the left side guns are fixed, and a couple of the right side guns have been put in place. So I think it's time to move. I think it's got to be done soon. Winds blowing west, which will provide no problems whatsoever. They can get into Plattsburgh Bay without a difficulty. But I'm just not seeing there being enough attack opportunities to take Plattsburgh. It's a tough slog forward, and that's assuming that the British haven't extended too much of their force in their supply line. But I noticed one thing about this double line that made it powerful. They managed to cut off any road possibility. I was sneaking an American cav around to make an attack on the supply line. One, their supply line's less vulnerable because they have two of them. And the second is, it made it impossible to actually attack it because I couldn't get supply up because there were no roads. Trails and such don't count. So the depot has to be within 3 hexes of a road line, and there is no road line now. So the Americans are going to have to pull back and just take a defensive position because of that choice. If that choice hadn't been made, this area would have been vulnerable to having the supply line cut, which this guy probably doesn't need to be there. Let's get him moving. I think his movement allowance is halved for being out of command. Or something. Yep. So you can only move 2, but he can remove by road. And we'll get him heading down into command. Alright. Well, that's the end of the U.S. 9th turn to the British 9th turn. You can see the Americans have pulled their way back to Plattsburgh. British are pretty much set up for the attacks. The only thing is there's these decoys that they have to kind of push through. From what I understand, they have to actually kind of fight them or declare an attack. You can't just... It's kind of a difficulty with the game. The decoys really serve a defensive purpose, even though they're alone in a hex and there's no possibility there's anything else. They still prevent the British from moving forward quickly. And maybe the best strategy is to just fill the road with decoys. The problem with that is you can kind of sweep more than one out of the way if they try to block you that way. So the roadblocks and everything actually provide a deeper hindrance until you get to where they can make a solid line of them. It's time for the British fleet to move. No more repairs I'm going to do. Got to make sure that I get down there and get the fight in and maybe have a chance of winning even if I don't win the first round of it. Alright. You know, the Americans have been forgetting to do this. They should be in a prepared anchorage at this point. That gives a combat bonus. Just enables them to turn quicker and more stable firing platform. The British might throw a hasty anchor up. I think that limits things to long range fire, though. I have to look at the rules for that. Once they reach the bay, I'm not sure if they're allowed to do that just before combat, but I think they are. Alright, well, it's time for the start. Taking things cautious because chances are this space is the most heavily defended of all. I could have attacked with Robin alone, but he's only got some 18 strength points there, so I attacked the 2 hexes surrounding it, and I'm going to try to hit it with everything. See how well that works. The leaders for the British are all very good, but they're facing Malcolm, who's a +2 as well. There's a -1 for the fortifications, and a -1 loss, even though they say +2. A -1 to the defenders' losses for it. I also see the Navy's underway. They didn't get a very good roll. They only got a 2, which means or a 1 actually, right? Yeah, they got a 1, which means they could only move 3 spaces total, 1 plus the commander's rating. And other than that, the things that were attacked here and here were just decoys, so they didn't cost supply, I guess. Over here, the bridge was repaired. More and more supply coming up. You know, I mean, there just haven't been battles, so nobody spent their supply. We got huge piles for each side. The Brits have them kind of spread among their commands in case something terrible happens. The Americans have them back here. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot to start those fortifications. But yeah, now it just comes down to a die fest on this, on the land combat chart. And I looked at that and said, you know, it's probably 1-to-1. The Americans probably have 20 strength points in there. It's just not worth. I'll take more losses than they will, and the attrition value is not enough. I'm not going to be able to push them out of the hex that way. All right, well, on to turn 10, and we only got 3 turns to take all of Plattsburgh and win the naval battle. Okay, one of the more interesting aspects, we've got a naval battle going on in Plattsburgh Bay. I thought I'd kind of go into some detail with this. The land combat is pretty much standard fare. Naval combat, it's not too different from some other. You have a line of battle set up. It's important for facing, though. We're at long range, and so here we got starboard side facing port side on the different ships. The guns don't have 2 sides. I've set up the ships not entirely at random. The Americans were anchored, so I decided, well, they have to set up first. And then the British responded, putting their flagship against them, hoping to actually board it. They've got their Marines on board there. They've got their supplies on board one of the transport ships. The Americans have transport ships too. Basically, if you lose the naval battle, you're not going to be able to use your transports. I question whether the Brits should have brought theirs, but what are the Americans going to do with navies? This scenario, they want to defend Plattsburgh. They don't want to go up to the Richelieu River. So, let's start this. Basically, what happens now is simultaneous fire. So the Linnet, being at long range, has 4 guns starboard side. Oh. I have to have port side facing for the Confiance, because it still hasn't repaired its gun, put all its guns in place on the starboard. Okay, so it just fires. It's got, what did I say, 4 guns available, and no modifiers. Rolls a die, and I gotta remember, gun hits are all that matters in this case. It rolled a 6, which is a good roll, and it's gonna do 2 gun hits. Well, that's gonna be enough to take out both the sick and the Marines who were stationed firing on it. It gets to fire back. It's on the 1 table. I should have only left 1 group sitting there. It rolls a 5. It actually does more damage, I guess. Does 1 flotation hit, 2 gun hits over to the Linnet. And we just mark that down. Let's see if you can see a flotation, and we're on the starboard there. 2 gun hits. And that's that. Let's go and take a ship combat. We've got Down and his Confiance firing. The Confiance has lots of guns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Doubled is 16 at the Saratoga. And he's going to be firing at +2 for his leadership, but -2 for Macdon's leadership. So it's all even. rolls a 4. What did I say, 16? He does 4 flotation, 3 gun. And again, we mark that off. What is this? The Saratoga. 2, 3, 4, and 3 left side guns. Those actually shift. I should be, I should have, the Linnet only has long guns. Cool. Okay. The guns get apportioned based as evenly as possible based on the defender's desire, I guess. There's leader loss checks here. Flotation hits were incurred. Oh, so let's take the Saratoga shot first. It had 4 long guns available. It's really outclassed by the Confians. With a roll of 2, it does a flotation hit, which means the Confians has to worry about a leader loss check too. And we'll do that very quickly. And then I'll skip the rest of this because it's just going down the line for these. Okay, so 1 hit was occurring on the Confians. No chance of a leader loss. And 4 on the Saratoga. Possibility. Now we get to roll again. On a 1, the leader would be flipped over to a lesser side. That doesn't happen. Alright, I'm going to finish up the naval battle. That's the main flow of it. The only... Oh, there was a +2 to the die roll because they're anchored. So, what did they roll? Jeez, I don't remember. They only had 4 long guns. They must have rolled a 2. They actually should have done a couple of gun hits on the Confiance as well. And these will be port side gun hits. And apportioned. Alright. And that +2 is a huge bonus. Which the Brits could take a penalty to go into hasty anchor at some point. They might want to do that because they don't want to close. They're outgunned with the carronades, the short guns especially. Alright, well, I'll take a pause here and finish up the line of fire. So a couple of key things here. The Finch took enough flotation hits. It's not a very big ship. It took 2 out of its 3 that it had to roll to see if it struck colors. Anything but a 1 it would, and it would be kind of taken out of the combat, and whoever holds the hex would get, or the space would get it as a prize and be able to start refitting it and whatnot. Other than that, this is a tough call what to do. Turns out there's a decent number of short guns on these gunboats, and there's ships like the Chubb that can't fire at all until they get to close range. On the other hand, I think there are too many short guns on the Saratoga and on some of these other ships, the Eagle for example, to really allow this to become a close battle. So I'm going to throw the British fleet into hasty anchor. That means they've got a -2 on all their combat rolls for this round. But it'll make it easier for them to turn, and eventually they'll get that +2 die roll bonus, which might cancel things out. Right now it doesn't look too great. It looks like the Americans have done a much better job of shooting up some of the British ships. So we'll see what happens there. Well, this was the painful round of naval combat for the Brits, and it's looking iffy whether or not they can win the naval battle, actually. They lost the Chubb and Finch. Both were sunk. Now, these are tiny ships, but that's some additional gunpowder and some additional spaces in the line. Now, the ships that have been freed up can attack other ships, so the closest other ships. So the Preble is going to have both these gunboats helping it against this gunboat. And here's the other thing: one of the gunboats, gunboat number 2, which is actually the stronger of the 2 British gunboats, struck colors, and now you can see it's blue. That just means it's not allowed to help in the fight here. There's no John Paul Jones in this battle. But it does mean that we've got 4 ships lining up on gunboat 1, and then a couple of bigger ships hitting the Confiance, our big British ship. And finally, the Linnet was unable to take out the ground-based cannons this turn because of the penalty in firing. Now, they're going to have a benefit from now on, but they may have taken too much loss to make up for it. There's some fairly decent American ships out there, so we'll see how that lines out. Well, the other British gunboat struck colors, but also the Preble struck colors as well. It was down to 1 flotation hit. The lines shift a little bit, and this is where we're sitting. The Confiance is still a huge ship, and it's doing a number on the Saratoga slowly. But it's been moved over to face the Eagle now, and the Ticonderoga is going to be able to reach it at only -2 hits. These are a little further away, so they have. This is me reading into the situation. They have a greater penalty. Just making that roll up on the fly, actually. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see whether those British ships can hold out against this numbers disadvantage. Well, this is looking very ugly. The British are down to just the 1 warship, the Confiance, facing the entire American line. The Eagle has a chance of striking. Oh, I haven't fired for the Confiance this round. Has 7 shots coming in. It's at +4. 6 on the 7 is 3 and 2. Yeah, the Eagle had to take a strike last time. And 2 left side. Yeah, it won't be firing anyway, no matter what. It's just taking a hole in the line right now. I can pull it back to the reserve and bring something else up. But, nah, it strikes colors. And I'll push things forward. I still want to fire another round, see what I can do in terms of maybe making some of these others go, but I don't think I can go toe-to-toe against gunboat number 1. That's the big problem. It's got more guns than I do, and I'm not able to shoot it as long as they've got other things to put in the line. So I think the Brits are going to have to pull out of this battle, or possibly lose the Confiance, which would be a really major blow. I would say everything else that they're giving up here, the gunboats, the Linnet, are all acceptable losses comparatively. So even though the game doesn't really favor this, the odds of winning this battle aren't worth risking the Confiance too much further. Well, because of the prevailing winds, the Confiance actually had a risky time making it out. Now, this isn't part of the rules. Again, with a game like this, I'm always going to have to add things because it's obvious that nobody worked too hard to get all the possible situations ironed out. And it seems reasonable that trying to escape back the way you came when the wind is against you would require that tacking roll that is required to move that way normally. I also made a gale roll for him, and that didn't happen as well. So he got out of there. He's in a lot of danger, though, which is to say if the American fleet pursues, he may strike still, if he can't get out of there before that. The Americans have a much larger fleet with some captured British ships that they can start refitting. For the most part, though, I can just ignore the naval aspect of the game. It's over. The Americans have won the naval battle. The Brits can't win the game now, but they can avoid losing by taking all of Plattsburgh. All right, well, it's on to the land combat segment. So, for the land combat, the attack on this hex is 77 to 19. That boils down to a straight 3 to 1. Okay, we're going to be on that table. What are the modifiers? +2 and -2 for the leadership combines. -1 for the fortification. So there's going to be a -1 to the die roll. I had to roll to see if the militia stuck around. Now, they normally wouldn't. They roll on this militia unreliability table, and on a 1 through 6, and a 6-sided die, they won't fight. But there are a number of modifiers, and their total modifiers with the naval battle that gives them a +1 were +5. So they were unable, so they all stuck around. So we're just going to roll on that 3 to 1 table at -1, and that's a 1. Both sides will be losing 3. That's not a bad result at all for the Brits. However, the Americans are only going to lose 2 because they have the advantage of the city defensive terrain. Now, at this point, you start thinking, the Americans can't lose. They really cannot lose. Prevost can't even cross the river, for crying out loud, because he hasn't taken the Plattsburgh Bay area. I think I'm going to call this here. I'm not having much fun with this game. There's not all that much that's exciting about it. And it's impossible for the British to win at this point. It's impossible for them to even draw because they cannot cross the river. They can't make those attacks. Yeah. Because they have to have... Wait. Once he's adjacent, he can start rolling to attack. On a 6 he can. Okay, I guess we finished this. I'm going to wrap this one up and send it up. We'll play the next 2 turns, but I don't think the British can possibly take the fortification hexes. They've lost 3 steps. The Americans have lost 2, and that's throwing everything they have against 1 of 3 approximately equal American stacks.